Hey everyone, Casey Scanlon here, bringing you another Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. It's been a while since we've done a report. Fishing in the meantime has been pretty up and down. It's fall of the year, so the fish are spread out. The bite's typically tough, and this year it's been really tough. It's been exceptionally warm, and the fish have been changing day to day. We get some cold nights here and there, and the fish really seem to bite, when we get a cold night, but then it gets back to these 70, 80 degree days and the fishing's tough again. But it's October 30th. We've got 60, mid 60s, upper 60s as far as the water temperature goes. The water level, they've been playing with it just a little bit. They've been running some current the last week or two. I haven't really checked the lake report, but I've noticed when I've been driving over the dam, they've been pulling a little bit of water in the evenings. But as far as the lake level, we're down a couple feet, but it's been pretty stable. They might drop it a little bit. Last week it looked like they dropped it, about 6 inches or so, and then it held pretty steady from there. So they haven't been playing with the lake level a whole lot, but the fish have been pretty stingy lately. So as far as the bass fishing goes, crappie too, they've been tough all year, but they've been really shaping up the last few weeks, as well as the white bass. So look for a really good fall there. I've had a lot of guided trips last couple weeks, and we've been catching a lot. Whether we're targeting largemouth, white bass, or crappie, we're catching a lot of them. The largemouth, the location's been changing every day, and the size, varies. You just got to fish hard, and you're going to catch those little ones, and eventually you're going to run into a big one. That's just kind of all there is to it. But crappie fishing's been getting better. So crappie, bigger docks on the main lake, bigger docks back in creeks, around points, secondary points seem to be really good. You just want to follow the shad. I'm using my Garmin live scope as well as the side view to kind of idle in front of these docks, find them on the side view, and then pinpoint them with the live scope. But basically you're looking for a dock with a lot of shade, and I'm shooting a jig underneath the dock using a Bass Pro jig head. They've got a new one. I'll show it here on my next report. I don't have one handy in the boat right now, but they've got a new jig head with an awesome keeper on there that's really good for dock shooting, along with the Bass Pro Shops Baby Shad. It's a little bit tougher plastic, so when you're shooting the jig underneath docks, it doesn't slide down your hook. It's excellent. Best setup I've used. So Bass Pro Shops Baby Shad along with the Bass Pro Shops jig head, 1/16 ounce, 4 to 6 pound line. Find the biggest, shadiest dock you can, and look under there with your live scope. See if they're around. Seeing a lot of fish on brush. Seeing some fish on wave breaks, but the lower end has been kind of stingy. It's starting to turn on a little bit. There's bigger crappie down here for the most part, I believe. They're just a lot of nice ones, and they're starting to bite a little bit. Evenings, mornings are always the best for those guys. But brush piles in 8 to 20 foot, been some fish showing up, and even deeper 30-foot piles can really, those fish like to suspend, so they get over the top of them. So finding those deeper piles where you can get a large group of fish that will suspend over the top of them can be a really good thing. So it's fall of the year, the fish are shallow deep, so just keep a lookout for them on your electronics. You're going to see some of those bigger schools. They're large. The fish tend to stack vertically on top of each other, so you can kind of identify them that way. White bass are showing up on the points, on main lake points if you get a bunch of wind, secondary points. But back in the creeks, there's some large schools. You'll see them surfacing in the evenings. Again, you want to get around the bait. They're usually in pretty large schools, so you'll see them, especially in the back of the creeks on your electronics. But main lake points have been having them. Early and late, again, have been really good. Anything from a rooster tail to a rattle trap, smaller Damiki style baits, small topwaters. Really, you can catch those white bass on a lot of things, but like a half-ounce jigging spoon has been, like a white slab spoon has been really good when we've been targeting those. But let's get to the bass fishing. That's what I like to do, and that's what I'm sure you guys are tuning in for. So we had the Toyota Series, tons of tournaments. Honestly, too many tournaments. There's like 4 boat tournaments. There's 150 boat tournaments. There's just been a ton of them on the lake all year. I wish the tournament directors would like get with one another and try to schedule these things out where they don't conflict with one another, where they'd get better boat numbers, better returns. And for fishermen, you know, we'd get better prize money, you know, better competition. So I wish everybody would get on the same page as far as that goes. But lots of tournaments, lots of fish being caught, but you know, a lot of small ones right now. Quality fish have been hard to come by. We had Toyota Series at the beginning of the month, big tournament, lots of boats. Weights were pretty decent, made the top 10 in that one. Fishing changed every single day. So water temp's been in the 70s most of the month. So you've really had to stay on your toes to kind of keep after them. Lots of baits are working. But you know, we fished a lot of tournaments since then, like just little small ones, and man, fishing's been up and down. We've been catching that, you know, 14-pound mark to 12 pounds, like just really consistently. Been getting a lot of big bites and just haven't been getting them in the boat. Just been kind of a crappy fall for as far as that goes. But yeah, the fish have been biting everything. So you've had to adjust, had to change parts of the lake. You know, it's all just kind of been changing, and it's going to continue to change. The leaves are finally starting to fall, and but we've still been getting these warm days. But the fish are feeling these shorter days. They're going to start feeding heavier, and been a topwater bite. Some other things starting to develop. So we'll just kind of go through the baits that we've been throwing. A lot of moving baits right now. They seem to be working best. I'm a jig guy. I throw my Trophy Bass Company Pro Jig pretty much all year long, along with some finesse jigs. Been experimenting with some of the new XPS line of jigs from Bass Pro. They've got XPS has got some awesome baits, and I'm going to show you a few of them right now. But yeah, the 1/2 ounce jig has been a staple. It was a staple for me in that Toyota Series, and basically every day that I fish. I've been putting a number of trailers on there, from this beaver style trailer to a Bass Pro Shops Craw Diggity. What else do we got? Bass Pro Shops Chunk has been really good. I like that when I'm swimming a jig or in really shallow water, like the Chunk. But variety of plastics as well. Everything from a tube to a finesse worm to a fluke has been working really good. But the jig is a staple for me. Day in, day out. I've got it on 20-pound line. I've got it on a 7'4" Bass Pro Shops Technique specific rod and a carbon light reel, 8-3-1. This is an awesome jig rod. It's the Dragon rod. If you're in the market for one, this is a pretty sweet rod. I've got 4 or 5 of them, and it's pretty versatile. I've normally got a jig on 3 or 4 of them with varying weights, and that's something you probably want to do right now, is vary your weights depending on how deep you're fishing, because a lot of these fish will be extremely deep and a lot of them are going to be extremely shallow. 1/2 ounce is a great place to start at, but I've usually got a 5/8, a 3/4, and you know, sometimes even lighter rigged up. Here's another one of my jigs with that Craw Diggity on the back that you can see something's chewed off of there, but a lot of action to it. I like that when I'm fishing a little bit deeper. Seems like they like that kind of falling action, and it gets straight to the bottom pretty quickly. I also like it when I'm swimming the jig, but a lot of times when I'm fishing shallower, I'll do that a little bit of a gliding action, whether it's with that Chunk or with a beaver or something like that. Both of those trailers will work. Really, any trailer will work. Green pumpkin, black and blue, brown. If you pick one of those colors, you're going to catch some fish for sure. Same way with the soft plastics. Worms, creature baits, all of it. Green pumpkin, black and blue. If you can't catch them on those, then they're probably not biting it that good, or you need to change locations or something, because they will bite those two colors anywhere in the country. So, and especially here at Lake of the Ozarks right now, you don't need to get super complicated with it. We have been throwing white around a little bit. I've got one of my white jigs handy here, another 1/2 ounce size. Been throwing that a little bit. They miss it a lot. Seems like crankbait has been better. I'm throwing this around like suspended fish that are on the ends of docks, down the sides of docks. Some days the fish are just up in the column. And so, yeah, I'm throwing that along with like a square bill crankbait. Square bill's been really good, whether you're fishing along the sides of docks. You can fish it through shad schools in the backs of creeks. There's been a lot of shad starting to show up in the backs of the creeks again. They just come and go from there this time of year. One day they're going to be in the backs, and then the next day they're gone. You know, if they drop the water a little bit or something, they just seem to move around quite a bit. But there's some fish starting to show up in the backs of the creeks again. Really stingy, a lot of white bass, a lot of smaller bass, but you do see some bigger schools back there occasionally, and you'll see some schooling from time to time. So good place to check out. Topwater bite is starting. Bass Pro Shops Chaos Shad, really good bait from Bass Pro Shops. Gotta buy one. They're $9.99 and they sound awesome. They move some water. They got 3 different sizes in those, and worth picking up a couple of those for sure. And you know, you got your ploppers, white, black, some kind of a clear type color if you're getting that clear water. But no need to get too complicated. Keep it pretty simple there. Another bait from Bass Pro Shops that's been good is a walking bait. This is the Smooth Walker from Bass Pro, and I really like that, the black color on there. That's been pretty good. Fishing that in open water, mostly dock corners, behind docks too, if you're willing to throw it back there and deal with the treble hooks and the cables. It can be a good option. You can just sit there, walk it in place back behind those dock cables, keep it in one spot, and sometimes trigger a bite that way. But a lot of moving baits right now. I've got, let's see here, I've got like a medium-sized crankbait. I've been just covering some water with that, fishing it on dock corners, fishing it over the top of brush, windy points, just reeling it down the sides of docks. On windy days, you can kind of keep that on your hand. It's a good way to cover water, find some fish. Chatterbait has been working a little bit. One of my favorite baits to throw, not super productive on this lake for whatever reason, but at times it can be crazy good. And I've had some decent days on it lately. Always worth throwing. Super efficient bait around the docks. You can skip it, slide it underneath the cables. You can fish it in open water. It's much like the square bill or the spinner bait. So you got to keep giving them different looks. It seems like one day they want one thing, and the next day you'll go back to the same spot and nothing. They want something different. They're still there. They might have moved. They might have repositioned, whether it's gotten deeper, slid down the bank a little bit, repositioned on the dock or the brush pile. It's all been changing. So, but the Garmin Live Scope really helps, as far as making those minor adjustments. Like I'm going to a lot of the same spots that I've always gone to, that I found a long time ago that have just held fish, So I'm going to a lot of those places, but now I can see on that Garmin Live Scope, if they're high in the water column, if they're sitting off to the side of the brush pile, if they're on the shady side of the dock, if they're positioned on the crossbars. It's just making my job a lot easier. I can make those fine adjustments, see where they're at, make the bait adjustment that's necessary to catch the fish, and go from there. And a lot of times, these fish have got to be in the mood. Timing is huge in the fall. They've got to be, you can be in the right spot at the wrong time and you don't catch any. But if you're in the right spot at the right time, it can be really, really good. So jerk bait, also a bait that's been pretty good. Been throwing it on my guide trips. a lot around dock corners, things like that. You can throw it in open water. Been picking fish off on the live scope, throwing it over the top of brush. It's another bait, just like the crankbait, that I've been keeping in my hand a little bit and catching a few fish on. Spinner bait is really starting to come on strong. Right now we've had 2 or 3 really windy days in a row. So spinner bait's always good. This one's got the little red kicker blade, which is usually a little better in the fall, or I'm sorry, in the spring, but I've been catching a lot of fish in the fall on it. But typically like white and chartreuse, all white, 17 to 20 pound Bass Pro Shops fluorocarbon on a 7-foot medium heavy rod. And that's my spinnerbait setup. Has been for a long time. Catch a ton of fish on that. 6/8 to 1 gear ratio reel. You know, for crankbait, spinnerbait, all that stuff, this Bass Pro crank and stick, hard to beat. It's a rod I've been using for a long time, and it works especially good on some of those treble hook baits. They got it in a bunch of different sizes. But glide bait's been working a little bit. It's a bait that I really like to throw. I'm kind of addicted to watching it, but it does not catch them every day, and they're getting used to it, I think. And you know, some days they bite it, some days they don't, but it is a fun bait to throw. Been throwing a lot of different kinds, you know, crazy expensive models to, you know, crazy inexpensive models, trying to see if, you know, if it's a color thing, if it's a weight action that kind of gets them going. But you know, with this tough bite, been doing a lot of experimenting, from soft plastics to hard baits to big baits to small, and you know what, it's all producing some results. It's just getting around some fish and making them bite, being there at the right time. Sometimes, you know, you have a 1 or 2 hour window of them biting this time of year, and that's just me being honest with you. The other day it was, you had 2 hours in the afternoon, and the day before that it was like you had 3 hours in the morning to do your damage. So it changes a lot. Glide bait I've been throwing that you should check out. I've been doing a lot of Bass Pro plugs, but been throwing a lot of their stuff, and it's pretty dang good. But this is the new Swerve brush tail. So they got one with a plastic tail, and they got one with this like paintbrush tail, but they're cheap. They're like $20 or less. Looks like a gizzard shad, especially with that black back in the water. Good action. Really good action. It's easy to work. This one, you know, you can't really see it in certain water clarities because it's so natural looking, like at the end of a long cast. A lot of times like a big, bright, like a whiter bait, this one's still kind of natural, but like, you know, a big white bait, you can see a long ways. You can see that you're working it right. And, you know, it kind of helps build confidence when you know what it's doing in your retrieve and everything else. But this bait right here, pretty easy to work. You know, you can do the reel handle like half a turn and just get it to glide back and forth. Heavy bait, so it's also, and it's hard. It's got a real hard finish on it. So been throwing it a lot. You can see it doesn't get a lot of hook rash on it. It's got a little bit starting on that tail there, but the paint job keeps up well. And what I wanted to say is that it shows up super good on your live scope. So if you're using like a Garmin live scope, you're fishing for fish that you're not visibly watching eat this bait, like it sinks good since it's heavy. It sinks down to them really good, and has a good action underwater. You don't have to worry that your bait's not having the proper action. It's easy to work. It sinks down to them and has a great return because of the hard finish. So for $20, pick up the Swerve. It's a really good bait in general. Glide bait's been fun to throw. Other baits have been working. On some of my guide trips, we've been throwing still a wacky rig. It's slowing down quite a bit. Ned rigs on these really finicky fish, but like finesse jig and like a Magnum trick worm or a Magnum Finake worm from Bass Pro, Green Pumpkin have still been consistent producers. You could still get bit on a 10-inch plastic worm. I mean, we're still almost 70-degree water temperature, so there is a ton of stuff working. but it's starting to look more and more like fall every single day. So locations of the fish have been kind of varying. A lot of fish on the ends of docks. Tons of fish on the ends of docks, whether it's in the creeks or out on the main lake. They've been relating to crossbars and just like kind of the wind breaking around the ends of these docks. It's just a good spot. It's you know, when you got a lot of shad out in the middle like they are right now, a lot of shad out deep, it's like being first in line at the buffet. They want to get out on the front of that dock so they can intercept those shad easier and quicker. They're hiding underneath the crossbars. But again, that's a day-to-day bite. Some days it's good and you're like, man, I've got this figured out. It's easy. I can pattern them. Next day, not so much. So a lot of times it's a timing issue as well. Get your timing right, whether it's morning or afternoon, and you're going to catch some of those fish. So a lot of those fish sitting around dock corners. Big docks have been good, but you never really know. Some of those smaller ones are the ones that got big fish on them. And, you know, it could be in a foot of water, and it could be a dock in 60 or 70 foot of water right now. I mean, I know that kind of makes it hard to pin them down, but both are working. So you just kind of want to experiment. Fish docks with crossbars, bigger docks, docks with wind. That'll help you kind of narrow it down a little bit. Docks with a lot of shade, especially if you get, you know, shade on one side or the other. That can be a big deal sometimes, and you're going to have to experiment to see which side they want at that particular time in the day. Brush piles. Fish start always in brush here at the lake. They're starting to show up in some brush piles. So fish over the top of the brush with that crankbait, jerkbait, things like that. And then get down in the brush with that 1/2 ounce jig and maybe a shaky head worm, and target those fish that way. So don't get too complicated. Throw in there a few times. And leave. If they're active, they're typically going to bite. So fish are starting to show up in brush, backs of creeks, next to boat docks. A lot of the fish are on docks right now in the fall of the year. So brush around docks is key. But a lot of that mid creek brush has been good. So but they can get in brush out to 30 foot this time of year. So you kind of got to keep it honest. They're on the move. The fish are changing a lot, so you got to change and kind of keep them honest. And in order to be consistent, you kind of have to change what you're doing all the time. So brush piles have been good, shallow and deep. Docks, shallow and deep. Start looking at the backs of the creeks. Really hard. There's going to be some more fish show up back there. They go back and forth all fall. They show up in August back there, and they kind of go back and forth between biting, not biting, you know, being suspended out in the middle of the creeks. So go back there, look for some of those fish, crankbaits, spinnerbaits, schooling fish with the top water. It can all be happening. So go back there, fish around, see what's happening. Top water bite. Again, has been kind of more in the creeks, main lake points, secondary points, channel banks, anywhere with some bigger rock. The key is to find the shad. You see some bigger shad on the bank, you know, fish those areas a little more thorough. Wind and getting tucked back behind the docks can be a big key too to getting bit. It's harder to get bit going down an open bank than weaving in and out of the docks. It's time consuming, it's difficult. You're gonna scratch your boat, you're gonna get frustrated, and you're gonna get hung up. But a lot of times that's where some of the bigger fish are laying, especially when the bite gets tough. But a lot of things going on at the lake. We've got a lot of tournaments still left to go. A lot of tournaments here in November. We've got our Bass and Bob Invitational, where we fish for 2 days and play golf. So I've got to go get on my golf game a little bit. It's usually not too terrible, but I haven't played in a year, so that will be a factor. But you got to fish good, and there's going to be some big tournaments coming up. We've got Anglers in Action's going to have a few tournaments. Bass and Bob's always got some tournaments going on in the fall. So fishing's going to get better, a lot better. These fish have got to eat up for the winter time, and your jerk bait, your A-rig, and your top water and spinnerbait bite are just going to get a lot better. Wiggle warts, your rock crawler type baits are going to get really good here as we dip down into the 50s. But man, we're hanging in there in that high upper mid 60s kind of water temp. I mean, it was just a week ago and the water was in the 70s. So we're still hanging tough as far as water temperature goes. But once it dips down a little bit, with these shorter days, these fish are feeling it. They're going to really start eating. So it's going to be an awesome time to be on the water. November and December, probably two of my favorite times to be out here. The crappie are biting like crazy. The white bass and the hybrids are really starting to go crazy in school and can be really fun. We catch some big hybrids. So if you're looking for a guide trip, now is an awesome time to book one. We've had not only great weather, but the fishing is going to be good. It's getting better every single day, and your chances of catching some big fish are going to go up as we get some of these colder nights under our belt. But crappie fishing and white bass hybrid fishing is phenomenal this time of year. Super fun. So if you're interested in a trip doing any of that, or going out chasing some of these bass, learning how to pattern them this time of year, or maybe practicing for next year, upcoming tournament, just wanting to get better, improve your skill set on live scope, whatever it may be, give me a shout, leave me a message, let me know, and we'll go out fishing. Got some open dates, that's for sure. But fishing's going to be getting a lot better. So looking forward to that happening. And until the next report, good luck out there.